Now that you have all the blocks put together, let's start joining together our quilt. We're going to first begin by putting the corner sections onto the center section. The first thing we need to do is to cut 4 2-inch strips of fabric for the binding. That will either be a contrasting fabric, which is what I'm using in this case, or you can use a fabric that blends with your background. You then want to go to your pressing surface and press each of these 4 strips in half, lengthwise. We now need to center these 2 sections with each other. And we've done this before. You're going to fold the center in half and place a pin, and then bring the edge to that center pin on each side, and on the fold place another pin. So you'll have the center and the quarters marked. You'll do the same thing on the corner sections. Next, you're going to lay the corner section face down on the center section, line up the alignment pins, and pin the 2 edges together. Notice you will have 2 1/4-inch dog ears on each side of the corner pieces when you piece it to the center. This tells you that you've got it aligned correctly. Our next step is to take the 2-inch strip that we previously had cut out and pressed in half, and pin it in place. We're going to pin the raw edges of that strip to the raw edges of the corner and the center. You will notice that you have excess strip hanging over both ends. That's okay, we'll trim that off later. It's now time to stitch your corner to your center with your strip on top. Now you can do this however it works with your machine. My machine actually works better with this regular foot. I have my machine set at a 3.0 length stitch, and I have lowered the foot pressure just a little bit to accommodate the bulk. Depending on your machine, you may want to use your walking foot, or whatever foot gives you the best results without sliding your fabrics. Take it easy, there's no race here. Don't pull and poke on these right now, because remember, you still have some bias strips that you're dealing with. So you've done a beautiful job so far. Just take your time, and before you know it, you'll have this piece on. It might also help you to use a lot of pins on this edge. And remember, we do not remove the pins until right before we get to them. If you remove them ahead of time, you're defeating the purpose of the pinning. So whichever method works for you, let's get these pieces together. And there you have it, one joined corner to the center. We're going to take that over and press it, and you can see how nicely it lays now. From the back side, we're going to press the banding towards the center of the quilt and pin it in place. Here's a little tip for you if you haven't discovered it yourself. I always had difficulty when I was sewing by hand, particularly on a batik, because the thread count is so high. It just seemed like I was constantly trying to force that needle through the fabric. I have since found hand applique needles. They're a very fine needle and very sharp, and they penetrate that fabric like a knife through warm butter. It just is unbelievable. The only bad thing is the eye of the needle is really, really, really hard to see. Let me just see if I can hold it up here. There it is, folks. There's that tiny eye of the needle. Well, with my aging eyes, that just wasn't doing it for me. So the next great investment that I went out and got was this needle threader. And it's really great for those of you who never used one. You put the needle with the eye down into the little hole. Now we're going to get a piece of thread. And we run the thread in this little slot right here. You push down the lever, pull up your needle, and you'll see a little loop that's formed through the eye of the needle. You just pull on that loop, and just like that, you have your needle threaded. That's really great. Just thought you'd like to know. I'm hoping that you can see the stitching that I'm going to show you now. I purposely used a contrasting banding on these two pieces so that it would show up in the video. You can do that. It will give you a decorative element on the back of the quilt, or you can use the same fabric that you have for your backing for your banding. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start out. I have a single strand of thread that's knotted on the end, and I'm going to bury the knot underneath the banding. Okay, I'm going to come up straight up from where I just buried that knot and take a bite right into the corner. Now I'm going to zoom in a little, maybe that'll help you a little bit. I don't want to get it so zoomed that it makes it fuzzy, so bear with me. Okay, now we're going to take a stitch right below that, directly below that, and scoop up some of the backing fabric and then go right in the edge of the binding and take a stitch. Now again, we're going to go right underneath that stitch into the backing, take a small stitch, and go right into the edge of the banding again. Again, stitch right underneath that stitch into the backing, small stitch over to the edge, and that's a folded edge of the banding. It's the same way that you hand stitch a binding to your quilt. It makes it very neat. You can't see the stitches when you're all done. So it works up pretty quick, so I don't think it'll be so bad for you. You didn't like the Bethettes, and for those of you who don't like hand stitching, I apologize, but this is the neatest way to do it. So again, you come up at the fold, take a stitch into the binding, into the backing rather, right below where you came into the fold. Take a stitch, come back up into the fold again, get down into the backing right at that point, come up at the fold again, and we'll continue to do that until we reach the other end. After you've hand stitched the banding in place, then Simply take your scissors and snip off the excess even with your quilt. Go on and do the opposite side corner. And before you know it, you're going to have all 4 corners done, and they're all done exactly the same. And this is a view of the back of the quilt. You can see that the contrasting bands really make an accent statement. If you want it to be more subdued, I'd suggest using the same color as your background fabric, and they'll hardly be noticeable. It's starting to look like a quilt now, isn't it? Are you excited? I am. It's taken us a long time to get to this point. So I'll see you next time when we start finishing it up.